Something is shifting, and I don't mean a small shift. I mean a fundamental, ground level change in how the medical establishment thinks about aging. A change that, if you understand it, completely rewrites how you should be thinking about the second half of your life. For most of modern medical history, aging was treated as inevitable, as background noise, as the thing that happens while doctors focus on the diseases that come with it. You get older, your body declines, things break down, and medicine steps in to manage the damage after it happens. That was the model. And most doctors, if they were being honest, operated inside it without question. But that model is cracking, and the cracks are coming from inside the institution itself. In the last 5 years, some of the most respected names in medicine, researchers at Harvard, Stanford, the NIH, the Mayo Clinic, have begun saying publicly what a fringe group of longevity scientists have been arguing for 2 decades, that aging is not just an inevitable background process, that it is, in significant part, a biological mechanism, one that can be measured, slowed, and in some cases partially reversed. I'm Dr. Julian Cross, and today I want to walk you through exactly what has changed, why it matters more than almost anything else being discussed in health right now, and what it means for you practically, right now, today, at whatever age you're watching this. If you're new here, subscribe. I cover evidence-based health and longevity every week. This one is important. Let's get into it. Let me give you the context first, because without it, the shift doesn't make complete sense. For most of the 20th century, the dominant view in medicine was that aging was simply wear and tear. The body is a machine. Machines break down over time, parts wear out. There's no mechanism to intervene in, it's just entropy happening to biology. Under this model, the job of medicine was to treat diseases, cancer, heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, as separate independent conditions. Each one got its own specialty, its own research funding, its own drug pipeline. Aging itself was not a target. It was the water that everything else swam in. And this model produced real results. We got better at treating heart attacks. We got better at managing diabetes. Certain cancers became survivable that weren't before. Life expectancy climbed through the 20th century, largely because we got better at not dying from acute events. But something strange happened as people lived longer. They didn't just get more time, they got more years of multi-system decline, more years of taking 5, 6, 7 medications simultaneously, more years managing 3 or 4 chronic conditions at once, more years of functional loss, losing strength, losing cognitive sharpness, losing independence. We were keeping people alive longer without keeping them healthy longer. And the medical establishment, to its credit, eventually started asking why. The answer that has emerged over the last 2 decades of research is one of the most significant ideas in all of modern biology. Aging is not just wear and tear. Aging is driven by specific, identifiable biological processes. And those processes, not the individual diseases they produce, are the real target. In 2013, a landmark paper was published in the journal Cell called The Hallmarks of Aging. It was written by some of the most influential biologists in the world. And what it did, for the first time in a rigorous, consensus-building way, was lay out the specific molecular and cellular processes that drive biological aging. Not disease, aging itself. The paper identified 9 hallmarks, things like genomic instability, the accumulation of damage to your DNA over time, telomere shortening, the gradual erosion of the protective caps on your chromosomes that occurs with every cell division, cellular senescence, the process by which damaged cells stop dividing but refuse to die, instead releasing inflammatory signals that damage surrounding tissue, mitochondrial dysfunction, the declining efficiency of the energy-producing structures inside every cell, chronic inflammation, a low-grade, persistent inflammatory state that drives virtually every age-related disease. These aren't separate problems. They are interconnected biological processes. They drive each other, compound each other, accelerate each other, and together they produce what we experience as aging. Now here's the thing that changed everything. Once you can name the mechanisms, once you have specific, measurable biological targets, you can study interventions. You can ask, what slows this? What reverses it? What drugs, what lifestyle factors, what compounds interact with these specific pathways? And that question opened a research pipeline that is now producing results that would have seemed like science fiction 20 years ago. Let me tell you about some of the specific findings that have forced the medical establishment to take this seriously, because I think you need to hear the actual science, not just the headlines. The first is senescent cells. We talked about these briefly, cells that have become damaged, stopped dividing, but haven't been cleared from the body. They accumulate with age. By the time you're in your 70s, a significant percentage of cells in certain tissues are senescent, and they are not passive. They secrete what researchers call the senescence-associated secretory phenotype, a cocktail of inflammatory molecules that damages neighboring cells, disrupts tissue function, and accelerates aging in surrounding areas. Here is what changed the conversation. Researchers at the Mayo Clinic showed that when you selectively remove senescent cells from aged mice, using drugs now called senolytics, those mice show measurable improvements in physical function, cardiovascular health, and lifespan. Not small improvements, significant, reproducible improvements. The mice lived longer, they moved better, their organ function improved, and some of those improvements appeared even when the senolytics were given late in the animal's life. The implication, and this is what has mainstream medicine genuinely rethinking things, is that aging-related decline is not just the inevitable result of time passing. Some of it is the result of specific cellular processes that can be interrupted. The damage is real, but it is not necessarily permanent. Human senolytic trials are now underway. Early results in specific conditions, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, diabetic kidney disease, have been promising. This is not yet clinical practice, but the direction of the science is clear. The second finding is about something called NAD+, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. It's a molecule present in every cell in your body, and it is essential for mitochondrial function, DNA repair, and the activation of a class of proteins called sirtuins, which are sometimes called longevity genes because of the central role they play in regulating cellular stress responses in aging. NAD+ levels decline dramatically with age. By the time you're 50, you have roughly half the NAD+ you had at 20. By 70, it declines further, and this decline is now understood to be directly implicated in mitochondrial dysfunction, declining cellular energy production, impaired DNA repair, and the loss of sirtuin activity, all of which are hallmarks of aging. What's significant is that researchers have found that NAD+ levels can be raised. Through precursor molecules, particularly NMN and NR, which the body converts into NAD+, it is possible to restore NAD+ to more youthful levels in animal models. In humans, the supplementation studies show NAD+ levels do rise. Whether that translates to the full spectrum of anti-aging benefits seen in animal models is still being studied. But the mechanism is real, and the scientific establishment is paying attention. The third finding, and this one is perhaps the most paradigm-shifting, is biological age versus chronological age. Chronological age is how many years you've been alive. Biological age is how old your body's cells and tissues actually are at the molecular level. And here is the extraordinary thing that the last decade of research has made clear. These two numbers are not the same, and the gap between them is not fixed. Using what are called epigenetic clocks, measurements of specific chemical modifications on your DNA called methylation marks, researchers can now estimate your biological age with remarkable accuracy. And what they find is that people of the same chronological age can have biological ages that differ by 10, 15, even 20 years. Someone who is 50 years old chronologically might have a biological age of 42. Another person who is 50 chronologically might have a biological age of 61. Same number of birthdays, completely different rate of biological aging. And more importantly, biological age is modifiable. Studies have shown that specific lifestyle interventions can measurably reduce biological age on these epigenetic clocks. One landmark clinical trial, the TRIM trial, published in 2019, showed that a specific combination of interventions reduced biological age by an average of 2.5 years over 1 year of treatment. And the improvement persisted even after the trial ended. A more recent study, published in 2023 in the journal Aging Cell, showed that intensive lifestyle intervention, diet, exercise, sleep optimization, and stress management reduced biological age on multiple epigenetic clocks by an average of over 3 years compared to controls. 3 years of biological aging reversed with lifestyle in 1 year of intervention. When mainstream researchers at respected institutions start publishing results like that in peer-reviewed journals, the conversation in medicine has to change, and it is changing. Now, I want to talk about what the medical establishment is actually admitting, because I think it's important to be precise here. This is not doctors suddenly saying aging can be cured. This is something more nuanced and in some ways more significant. What is shifting is the official framing of aging as a target. In 2022, the World Health Organization added a code for aging to its International Classification of Diseases. This was not a small administrative decision. The ICD is the global standard that determines what conditions medical research can be funded for, what insurance covers, what pharmaceutical companies can develop drugs to treat. Adding aging to that framework, even partially, opened doors that were previously closed by definition. Major pharmaceutical companies are now running clinical trials explicitly targeting aging mechanisms. Not Alzheimer's, not heart disease, aging itself. AstraZeneca, Novartis, Unity Biotechnology, billion-dollar companies are now directing R&D resources towards senolytics, NAD plus metabolism, and other hallmarks of aging. The National Institute on Aging has funded the Interventions Testing Program, a rigorous, multi-site trial that has tested dozens of compounds for their ability to extend healthy lifespan in animal models. Rapamycin, a drug already used in organ transplantation, has shown some of the most robust lifespan extending effects ever observed in a mammal, and human trials are now being designed. Researchers and clinicians who were considered fringe 5 to 10 years ago for talking about aging as a treatable condition are now being cited in mainstream medical literature, are being invited to speak at major medical conferences, are being taken seriously by institutions that would have dismissed them a decade ago. The shift is real. It is gradual and it is incomplete. Medicine moves slowly, as it should, but the direction is unmistakable. Now, let me tell you what I think is the most important part of all of this for you personally. Because you might be watching this thinking, great, so someday there will be drugs that slow aging. What does that have to do with me right now? Everything. Here's why. The biological mechanisms that researchers are now targeting with drugs and clinical interventions, senescent cell accumulation, NAD plus decline, mitochondrial dysfunction, epigenetic drift, chronic inflammation, these are not mechanisms that only respond to pharmaceuticals. They are mechanisms that respond to how you live. They are exquisitely sensitive to lifestyle inputs. This is the part the mainstream conversation often misses. The exciting drug trials get the headlines. But the data on lifestyle interventions and biological aging is, in some ways, more impressive. Because it's available to you right now, it has no serious side effects, and the effect sizes are large. Let me be specific. Chronic inflammation, one of the central hallmarks of aging, is directly modifiable by diet. A diet high in ultra-processed food, refined carbohydrates, and seed oils produces a measurably more inflammatory state than a diet built around whole foods, fiber, and omega-3 fatty acids. This is not a hypothesis. The inflammatory markers are measurable in blood, and chronic inflammation accelerates virtually every hallmark of aging. It accelerates cellular senescence, it disrupts NAD plus metabolism, it damages mitochondria, it drives epigenetic aging. What you eat is directly influencing your rate of biological aging. Not metaphorically, measurably, molecularly. Mitochondrial health, another central hallmark, is directly and powerfully responsive to exercise. Aerobic exercise triggers mitochondrial biogenesis, the creation of new mitochondria. It increases mitochondrial efficiency. Resistance training improves insulin sensitivity, which reduces the metabolic stress that damages mitochondria. The effect of regular exercise on mitochondrial function in aging adults is one of the most replicated findings in the biology of aging. People in their 60s and 70s who exercise regularly have mitochondrial profiles that resemble those of people decades younger. Telomere length, the protective caps on your chromosomes whose shortening is a hallmark of cellular aging, is associated with sleep quality, stress levels, exercise habits, and dietary patterns. A 2013 study found that people practicing regular meditation had longer telomeres than matched controls. A study on caregivers under chronic stress found accelerated telomere shortening. These are not marginal effects. Lifestyle is one of the primary regulators of how fast your chromosomes age. NAD plus levels, which decline so dramatically with age, are supported by exercise, by adequate sleep, by caloric moderation, and by dietary precursors found in foods like edamame, avocado, mushrooms, and whole grains. The supplementation conversation is ongoing and the evidence is developing, but the lifestyle foundations for supporting NAD plus metabolism are established and available to everyone. And biological age itself, as measured by epigenetic clocks, responds to lifestyle. The 2023 study I mentioned earlier didn't use drugs. It used diet, exercise, sleep, and stress management. and it reversed biological age by over 3 years in 12 months. The drugs being developed are targeting the same pathways that lifestyle is already targeting. The drugs might eventually do it more efficiently, more completely, at later stages of damage. But the pathways are the same. And the window of greatest leverage, the window where lifestyle intervention has the most profound effect on your biological trajectory, is not 70. It's now. Whatever age you're watching this. So let me be practical. What does this science actually translate to in terms of daily behavior? The first thing, and the evidence here is overwhelming, is sleep. 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep is not a wellness luxury. It is the primary recovery window during which your brain clears metabolic waste products, your cells repair DNA damage, your cortisol resets, your immune system consolidates, and your biological aging clock ticks slowest. Chronic sleep deprivation accelerates every single hallmark of aging that we've talked about today. It is the most powerful accelerant of biological aging that most people are voluntarily choosing every night. The second is the inflammatory quality of your diet, not the calorie count, the inflammatory load. A diet built around whole, minimally processed foods, rich in diverse vegetables, adequate protein, healthy fats, and minimal added sugar, is not just a weight loss strategy. It is directly anti-aging at the molecular level. It reduces the chronic inflammation that drives senescence. It supports the gut microbiome, whose disruption drives systemic inflammation. It provides the micronutrients, folate, magnesium, zinc, B vitamins, that support DNA repair and NAD+ metabolism. The third is exercise, specifically the combination of resistance training and regular low-intensity movement. Resistance training 2 to 3 times per week for mitochondrial health, insulin sensitivity, and muscle preservation. Daily walking, even just 20 to 30 minutes, for cortisol regulation, inflammatory reduction, and cardiovascular health. This combination is the most evidence-backed behavioral intervention for slowing biological aging that exists. Nothing else comes close. The fourth is stress management, and I want to be clear that I don't mean eliminating stress, which is neither possible nor desirable. I mean regulating your physiological stress response. Chronic, unmanaged psychological stress drives cortisol elevation, accelerates telomere shortening, increases inflammatory markers, disrupts sleep, and degrades mitochondrial function. It touches every hallmark of aging. The interventions with the strongest evidence for reducing the biological effects of stress are, in order, social connection. Genuine in-person connection with people you care about has some of the most robust longevity data in all of medicine. Regular time in nature. Breath work. Even 5 minutes of slow diaphragmatic breathing per day produces measurable effects on cortisol and inflammatory markers. And purposeful engagement. Having something that matters to you that you're working toward. The research on purpose and biological aging is striking and consistently underappreciated. The fifth is avoiding the things that accelerate biological aging most aggressively. Smoking, which accelerates epigenetic aging faster than almost any other single behavior. Chronic alcohol, which disrupts nearly every aging pathway simultaneously. Prolonged sitting, which has been shown to be independently associated with biological aging, even when exercise is controlled for. And chronic social isolation, which is now as well established a risk factor for premature death as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. These are not abstract health recommendations. They are direct inputs into the hallmarks of aging. They are accelerators and decelerators of a measurable biological process, and you are choosing your inputs every day. Here is what I want you to take away from all of this. For most of human history, and for most of modern medical history, aging was something that happened to you. You were a passenger. Medicine could help manage the damage, but the trajectory was essentially fixed. That understanding is changing, not because of hype, not because of Silicon Valley optimism, because of peer-reviewed science in the most respected journals in the world, coming from researchers at the most respected institutions in the world, showing that aging has mechanisms, and mechanisms can be influenced. You are not a passive recipient of biological aging. You are an active participant in it. The choices you make about sleep, food, movement, stress, connection, these are not just health choices. They are biological age choices. They are determining right now how old your cells are and how fast they are aging. The medical establishment is finally catching up to what the science has been saying for years. The shift is real. And the most powerful thing you can do with that information is not wait for the drug that proves it. It's start living like it's already true, because the evidence says it is. If you want to go deeper on any of the specific mechanisms we covered today, I have dedicated videos on mitochondrial health, cellular senescence, NAD+, and what the current evidence actually shows, and the specific sleep changes that most reduce biological aging. Everything is linked in the description. And if this reframes something for you, if it gave you a different way of thinking about your own body and your own future, share it with someone who needs to hear it. That's the only reason I make these. I'm Dr. Julian Cross. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next one.